get through this.
Easy for listening. I wasn't able to do it. Easy for dancing. I'm not a great lover of cats. That's my fear.
You're a disgrace, you are.
Not me. That's my fear.
You're a disgrace, you are.
And welcome to another episode of Have Your Say, Shadowboxing. Today our studio got a guest, Dr. Emily Pierce, who is a veterinarian. However, these days is a home schooling parents. Emily, tell me about it. How does it started? You got a kid?
Yep. So let me
And
say,
it's a boy?
He's a 10-year-old boy, Samuel,
Yes.
who is autistic.
So he is disabled.
Yeah, definitely has a disability.
Yes, disability. So how does it started? It's obviously very joyful when one got a kid, and then it's born and everyone is celebrates and taking it home. How do you discover the disabilities, or in your case, your kids, your son's disability?
Okay, for us, I guess the journey began just after he was 1, and we
Yes.
noticed that he wasn't reaching all the normal developmental milestones. He wasn't making any attempt to talk, he wasn't wanting to engage with us in any way. So I guess we got the help of a paediatrician and speech therapist, and basically was diagnosed with autism just before he was 2.
Before and stuff. But you know that from the beginning, from the signs, it is autism, or you was thinking
No,
about
definitely
something
not.
else?
It's a long journey, unfortunately,
Yes.
the
So how does
diagnosis
it
of
work?
autism.
Because some of the viewers probably interested about how does it really happen in
Okay,
in
so
a
for
life.
us, we were concerned about him not talking, about not engaging. We thought potentially maybe he was deaf, but his hearing tests were all normal. So our first port of call was with a speech therapist, who said it may be a number of things.
Yes.
I started Googling and looking up different causes of all the different signs I was
yes.
noticing. And I guess I was quite suspicious that he was autistic. The not engaging, the not verbalising, the not pointing out trains and other interesting objects that might go by. So the process is basically you need to see a qualified clinical paediatrician, a speech pathologist, and an OT.
Yes.
And basically that process can take anywhere from, if you're lucky, 6 months to 12 months.
So, okay, you got the diagnosis. Everyone been sure what's the problem with your son. What's happened after age through until entering to school?
Okay, so getting the diagnosis of
Yes.
autism is life-changing. And certainly to begin with, not at all in a positive way. With time, you realise that, it's still your little boy, but there's an awful lot of hard work, and what you thought your life was going to be certainly changes in a heartbeat.
And any sort of indication of how one became an artist or born as an artist?
Still not completely known. My personal belief
Yes.
is that there's definitely a huge component of parental involvement. So basically, the parents have autistic traits, and if the moon's aligned, for want of a better way of explaining it, you end up with an autistic child. There's genetic involvement, most definitely.
Most definitely. But
again,
we don't know the cause, so no one knows.
We don't know what else. There's certainly other factors involved, and yeah. I'm no expert in that field, but even the experts
You
don't
are
know.
an expert because you live with one
Yep.
and looking after, so you're not giving up on him.
No,
You are
no.
keeping it, and you do
And
your own battle.
We did everything we could in the early years to help him have as normal a life as possible. So for us, that involved daily ABA therapy, which is something called applied behavioural analysis,
Yes.
which is a specific therapy for autistic children. But, most families...
Is that a sort of therapy to help improving, or just to help
them learn? To help them learn what typical children learn virtually by osmosis. Typical children notice what's going on around
Yes.
them. Typical children absorb all this information. Our children
to
don't
be
learn that way.
taught.
They're taught differently, and they definitely
Different.
learn differently. Yeah.
So as the years passed, you obviously became sort of, as you say, recognized, still my son. I
Yep.
couldn't do much, I have to help, and you took that on. So how does it evolve?
Okay, so I was still a practicing veterinarian at that stage.
Yes.
Juggling the two lives was certainly not easy, but all things in all, we had a fairly happy, healthy little boy who was learning and who was developing. Maybe not at the same rate as his peers, but all things being equal, he was a happy, developing little boy.
So he reached his school age.
Reached school age, and I
Yes.
guess, to be honest with you, that's when we really hit the hard road. And we thought
Why is
things were
that?
tricky until then.
So who do you got the help before school age?
So it was through private therapy
Yes.
providers, and you know they come into your house and they develop.
Who paid for them?
Personally?
Personally, you
We
have
all-
to pay.
Yep. And it's,
No such thing as Medicare covers that.
and it's
problem.
certainly not inexpensive. Let's put it that way. You
No.
know, and there's families out there mortgaging their houses to give their children the best possible start.
So you hit the school.
And I guess that's the
And
hard part,
he's-
is you do all this to get your child as world ready and to help them improve as much as possible. And then you put them into an environment where it's like putting your child into Japan. It's just not set up for these kids. And
That's called school.
school. Yeah.
So what's happened then?
So it was a gradual process. I guess it took 18 months, but we had a happy, reasonably social, you know, he's autistic, so he certainly wasn't without his challenges,
Yeah.
but reasonably happy little boy who became a violent, terribly aggressive, withdrawn little boy who would wake up constantly at night and be awake for hours at night. And he would constantly just, no school, no school, no school. The first thing he'd say when he woke up in the morning was no school. It's heartbreaking as a mother to have to then go, school today, yeah, and try and put on a brave face. I would drag him literally from the car to school, and if I let go of him, he would bolt straight back to the car. He had a gastrovirus and was sick, and so he then realised that sickness equated staying home. So he then would, once he was well, started to try and make himself vomit every morning. Thought that that was the way to be able to stay home. And when none of those attempts worked, he would then use language that I daren't repeat here on his journey from school, from the car to school, in a last-ditch attempt to try and avoid going to
So
school.
what was the reaction of at the school? The teachers or the kids?
It's frightening for the other children.
Yes?
And I wasn't there, and my little boy couldn't talk well enough or didn't have the language at that time to be able to explain exactly what was going on. I know that a lot of the teachers try their best, but you've got 30 kids in a classroom and all they can see is one that's acting up and not really understand why.
Yes.
For a lot of teachers, it just looks like a naughty little boy.
Which is not true in this case, or most of the cases when you got
All
disabled
children
kids.
can be naughty, but most
Yes.
of the time for these children it is an overload of anxiety, an overload of frustration, an overload of the sensory.
So when you realized that, Emily, what you done?
We moved schools,
Schools?
in a hope that a smaller school
Will be
with
better.
different dynamics, and I did a lot of research into different schools before I decided on, because I knew we probably only had one more go. And he improved a little, but he still certainly never wanted to go to school.
Yes.
He certainly was still very aggressive and withdrawn. And for a number of reasons, at the end of 2014, beginning of 2015, we were forced into homeschooling.
And what
Not
homeschooling?
on my bucket list.
Yeah, I believe that. But what homeschooling is mean to a family who have to do that? or for you yourself?
It
Because
means
where you get
a
the money
huge-
for
a huge
homeschooling?
economic cost.
Yes?
It means a huge physical and relationship cost. The whole family dynamics change. I'm now the teacher, the mother, the wife, the cook, the cleaner, and there's no boundaries between when each job is done. For us personally, I have no regrets in doing it because I have a very happy little boy.
So the boy and his
He's
life is changed with homeschooling.
Amazing. Within weeks, we had people asking us what was happening, what
So
was
that's, for you, is a good solution.
for me is at the moment the only solution.
The only solution.
For me, I can't see any other solution at the moment.
What is missing from a perfect solution like homeschooling for your case?
There's no one component. There really is no one component in my view. There needs to be understanding from the teachers of what the child is going through and teacher training basically. And again, the teachers are in an unenviable position. They've got 30 kids in the class and one who's very different. So there needs to be teachers who are trained in dealing with children with autism.
But for you, Emily, what is missing for you from your perfect situation?
Time.
Time?
Money.
Money.
Energy.
So what do you think, why you couldn't have access to money to help to bridge your position as a home teacher? Parents.
Look, certainly that would be part of the solution because it would mean that we could train and help and employ people to help rather than me being everything. So certainly that would help the solution.
Do you know, by chance, how many similar parents in WA?
Hundreds. Hundreds.
And you got some
I would actually say thousands.
You got some sort of association which you can belong to and
There is
lobby?
a homeschooling networks, but they are started by homeschooling mothers.
So not necessarily for disabled kids.
There's some homeschooling, so there's some homeschooling groups, there's some homeschooling for disabled
Yes.
groups. From the education department, we get a yearly visit from a moderator for 2 hours, which points you in the right direction, and that's about as much as they can do in 2 hours. Yeah.
So if you and the other parents can have access for covering your cost of homeschooling, that makes life perfect or just easier?
No, that would make life easier. I think different parents have different goals and ideals.
Needs, yes.
You know, my little boy is very social, and if he could be in an environment where he felt secure and safe, I'm sure he'd love to go to school. He's never been at school for more than 3 or 4 hours a day, so he's not one of these kids that ever is going to, or in the short term anyway, manage a full day at school. But to be able to access some of the things at school, certainly, you know, maybe it may be part of the solution for him. At the moment, that's not a viable option.
My last question, if you can send a message to the government to solve disabled kids' problem in the school, what do you want to say?
To say it's not acceptable sounds fairly harsh, but I think that for most parents of a child with a disability, they just want the same chances as we all want our children to have, and that's to reach their full potential in a safe and happy environment. And that's certainly not happening for a lot of our kids at the moment.
Emily, thank you for being with us at the
Thank you.
WTV studios, and thank you for telling your story.
Thank you.
Don't forget, after the short break, we're coming back with more discussion on disability and home school.